Hey, what's up? What's going on out there? I'm gonna check out this video with Thomas Sowell. He's an economist. He's been around for a very long time. The good man. He still looks great for his age. I think he got to be pushing about either like in his 90s or something like that. But either way, he's going to be talking about Kamala and her policies going forward with the housing policy, the affordable housing she's talking about. But I'm going to give my raw opinion on it and check out the video.
We also know that as the price of housing has gone up, the size of down payments have gone up as well. Even if aspiring homeowners save for years, it often still is not enough. So in addition, while we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
Quote, the big...
Now, the first thing you have to ask yourself, where is this money coming from? Excuse me, money just doesn't pop out of thin air, quote unquote. You have to ask yourself, if you're a reasonable person, where is this 25K coming from?
biggest economic fallacy about housing is that affordable housing requires government intervention, close quote. Now, Tom, I have to remonstrate with you. No poor person would be able to live on the island of Manhattan or in the city of San Francisco if there weren't rent control or subsidized low-income housing that these cities forced builders to set aside when they built their high-rises for rich people. Isn't that manifestly true?
No, it's not even remotely true.
All right, explain. Explain.
Well, first history. There were more people, I believe, living in Manhattan prior to the rise of rent control and prior to the rise of government housing projects. My gosh, at one time, the Lower East Side of New York was the most tightly packed place in the world. New York and San Francisco have very long rent control laws, old ones and severe ones. And yet when you look at the cities with the highest rents in the country, of any major cities, they are number one, New York, and number two, San Francisco.
So now, the housing market can be complicated.
He never lied about that. Like, it's crazy how much people pay for rent in those two cities. And he should know, I mean, like I said earlier, he's been around for a very, very long time. I believe he's from New York. So he would definitely have a great knowledge and great basis about like what it was before housing projects came about and government assisted programs.
But look, I'm not new to this issue. As State Attorney General, I drafted and helped pass a homeowner Bill of Rights, one of the first in America. And during the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big banks for predatory lending with many of my colleagues, including Roy Cooper.
But you know what's funny? If my memory serves me correctly, Steve Mnuchin gave her some money to fund, I believe, I think she was running for office or something out when she was in California. And Steve Mnuchin, the bank he owned, was going through some predatory lending practices, and I think she exonerated him or something along those lines. He donated to her campaign. I forgot again whatever campaign she was running for, but it's funny now, like she wants to be for the people and wants to see these programs enacted, but she was basically in cahoots with one of the biggest predatory lending banks, in the country.
Won $20 billion for California families when I was Attorney General.
What happens is...
And one of the good men or good women can fact check what she just said. I'm not too sure about the numbers she just threw up.
Rent control around the world, really, because it's been tried so many times, is that people, if the rent control is severe, the people either reduce the amount of housing they build or they stop building housing altogether. And so what happens, the political authorities are then confronted with a situation. Do you want to have a situation where there's no new housing built and the old housing is wearing out, usually faster under rent control because the landlords don't have to keep it up as much? And so they step in and they'll have some kind of modification so that, well, let's say we're trying to protect the poor, so we won't regulate luxury housing. Of course, luxury housing and ordinary housing use much of the same labor, the same materials. And so therefore all the materials that would otherwise have gone into making ordinary housing goes into building luxury housing.
And by the end of my first
I mean, to his point about the rent control thing, I mean, certain situations, I think, if done in moderation, like respectfully, like, inflation, things go up. So you have to understand things like that. But if you're just a landlord and you're just like basically price gouging, I think that's unfair to the tenants, especially if you have loyal tenants.
term, we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class.
And when did this, I mean, my thing with the government coming in and building on all these things, it just sounds like some big FDR, a New Deal thing all over again to me. It just screams socialism to me, honestly.
Economic facts and fallacies once again. If we go back to the beginning of the 20th century, before government intervention became pervasive in housing markets, we find, and this is to me one of the most arresting assertions in the book, we find people paying a smaller percentage of their expenditures for housing than at the end of the 20th century. In 1901, housing costs took 23% of the average American family's spending. By 2003, it took 33% of a far larger amount of spending. What's going on?
What's going on is that they're restricting the amount of housing that can be built. And obviously, if you restrict the supply while the demand is growing, the prices will go up through the roof.
Cui bono? Who benefits from this arrangement?
Politicians most of all.
How?
Because they get the reputation of being for the poor and the downtrodden, and that they're setting aside affordable housing units, usually in some token amounts. They're preventing the evil landlords from raising the rent by rent control, and if they are able to keep the public paranoid that if they take off the rent control, it'll be just sky-high prices, and so they gain by that. Both the landlords and the tenants lose. They lose in different ways and to different extents. The tenants lose because they can't find a place to stay. The landlords lose because they don't make the profit they would have made otherwise. The builders lose because there's no demand for apartment buildings if nobody can make a profit on it.
Yeah, he hit the nail on the head with that. Honestly, it's all about money and aligning people's pockets. And when the government gets involved, they don't really care about the people. It's all about money. They want to line their pockets and have control. And like I said, institute some type of socialist ideological scheme, if you would have you. Like some trainer thought, okay, we get these people in these places and we give them these subsidies or whatever. They're basically in our pocket, under our control, and we're going to seem like we're doing good for the greater good of the people. But actually, no, because it's going to make the people reliant on the government. So that's my 1-2 about it. And like I said, I think Thomas Sowell hit it right on the head with his take on it. But if you got an opinion on it, leave it in the comments.